SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි. Tonight, slick deal. The cabinet spokesperson offers response to Omani loan for land deal.
We have not taken a decision as such. It's only the interest payment, and also we take the loan for a period of 1 year's time.
Who did it? Government and opposition parliamentarians trade barbs on the Trincomalee oil tank deal with India. Getting to the bottom of it, the Bribery Commission is set to investigate Sri Lankans named in the explosive Pandora Papers leak. Stay home, stay safe. Public health officials says now is not the time to strike. All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, the 6th of October 2021.
Lever Ayush Kaha Sabang Sandak Wage Babalana Pivituru Samakata.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. Government and opposition parliamentarians clashed today on the controversial Trincomalee oil tank facility held by the Indian Oil Company, following allegations of the facility having been gifted to the Indian company by the then government of 2003. Opposition members, however, claimed that an agreement read out in Parliament by Energy Minister Uday Gammanpila was false, despite the document outlining an agreement for full possession of all 100 tanks.
The second reading of the Petroleum Resources Bill was taken up in Parliament today, which will establish an independent, efficient and transparent regulatory framework for the exploration, development, production and management of petroleum resources in the country. However, today's debate was overshadowed by the China Bay oil tank facility issue, which the government accuses the opposition of having gifted the 100-tank facility to India back in 2003. However, opposition members rejected the allegations, saying that it was only an MOU for a joint development project that was signed.
ගරු ඇමතුමනි ඔබතුමා ප්‍රකාශයක් කළා තිබ්බා මම පුදුම වුණා මේ තිරිකුණාමලේ තෙල් ටැංකි සියල්ලම ඉන්දියාවට දීලා තියෙනවා කියලා. ගරු කතානායකතුමනි මේක සම්පූර්ණ වැරදි ප්‍රකාශයක්. තෙල් ටැංකි 100ක් තියෙනවා. ඒකෙන් 15ක් දුන්නා IOC එකට. ඉතුරු 15 තියෙන්නේ ඉන්දියාව ශ්‍රී ලංකාවයි ඒකාබද්ධව මේක දියුණු කරන්න ඕන. එතකොට ඒක වුණේ නැහැ. අපි තෙල් ටැංකි ඉන්දියාවට පවර්ලා නැහැ. ඒක වැරදි ප්‍රකාශයක්. මම කඩගාටු වෙනවා ඔබතුමාගේ ප්‍රකාශ කරා. නිවැරදි කරන්න.
ලක්ෂ්මන් කිරිවල්ල ඇමතුමා සමහරට එතුමාගේ වයස නිසා වෙන්නේ නැති අමතක වෙන්නේ නැති මොකක්ද උනේ කියලා මේ ඔබතුමා 2003 පෙබරවාරි මාස 7 වෙනිදා අත්සන් කරපු ගිවිසුම ඉංග්‍රීසි භාෂාවෙන් තියෙන්නේ. මේක මුළු රටටම ඇහෙන්න මං කියන්නම්. ඒතර ඔබතුමාම තීරණය කළා රටට කියන්න මම කියන්නේ ඇත්තද ඔබතුමා කියන්නේ ඇත්තද? ගිවිසුම පටන් ගන්නේ the agreement is made and entered into on the 7th day of February in the year of 2003 at Colombo. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔබතුමා අමාත්‍ය ධූරයක් දරපු ආණ්ඩුව තිබුණු කාලේ. මේ ගිවිසුමේ සඳහන් වෙනවා whereas the CPC's possess of the China Bay installation consisting of 99 storage tanks deemed to be having a capacity of approximately 10,000 metric tons each and other ancillary facilities including premises, pipelines, pumps, loading, discharging facilities for petroleum products situated on the land hereinafter called and referred to as the storage facility. The storage facility අනුවෙන් අදහස් කරන්නේ තෙල් ටැංකිය 99 කියන එක තමයි මම දැන් කියවපු තමුන්නාන්සලා අත්සන් කරපු ගිවිසුමේ ඡේදය සඳහන් වෙන්නේ. ඊළඟ එකෙන් කියවෙනවා and whereas the said LIOC has requested and the GOSL and CPC have agreed to lease the storage facilities and the land appertinent thereto to the LIOC LIOC for a period of 35 years.
මෙතුමා මේක බොරුවක් කරන්නේ මම ඔබතුමාට කියන මෙතුමා මේක සභාව නොමග යවන්න එපා. මොකද ඒ ගිවිසුම අවබෝධතා ගිවිසුමක් MOU එකක් විතරක් අත්සන් කරා මාස 6කින් ගිවිසුමකට යනවායි කියලා. හැබැයි මාස 6කින් ඒ ගිවිසුමකට ගියේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේක නීති විරෝධීව තමයි LIOC එක තියාගෙන ඉන්නේ. 2005 ඔබතුමන්ලා බලයට ඇවිල්ලා මේක ආපහු පවරවා ගන්නවා කියලා පොරොන්දු වෙලා අවුරුදු 10කට ඇල්ලුවේ නැහැ. ඊට අමතරව LIOC එකට එතන ලීසි තෙල් නිෂ්පාදනය කරන යාන්ත්‍රාගාරණයක් හදන්න ඉඩපාඩු දුන්නා. මේක ඕන වෙලාවක ගන්න තිබ්බා. අවුරුදු 10ක්ම ගත්තේ නැහැ, දැනුත් ගන්නේ නැහැ. මං අහන්නේ දැන් ඔබතුමන්ලා දැන් මේක ආපහු පවර ගන්නවද නැද්ද? එතකොට පෙට්‍රල් සෙට් ටික ආපහු පවර ගන්නවද නැද්ද? මේකට උත්තරයක් දෙන්නකෝ.
මේ ලේඛනයේ පිටපත මං කියන එක වැරදි නා හරි පිටපත පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ සභාගත කරන්න කියන මේක පටන් ගන්නේ agreement relating to the what is the word agreement, not an MOU. Agreement relating to the taking over of possession and related matters of the China Bay installation of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. පුළුවන් නම් මේක MOU කියලා තියෙන දුන්නේ නැහැ කියන ඔය ගිවිසුම
ගරු වැල් වටාරන් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. මම අහන්නේ ඉතුරු 85 අපි ඉන්දියාවට දීලා නැහැ. ඒක තියෙන්නේ ජොයින්ට් ඩිවෙලොප්මන්ට්.
ඔබතුමා කියනවනේ ඇග්‍රීමන්ට් එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා. මේ ඇග්‍රීමන්ට් එක සභාගත කරන්න ජනතාවට හෙළි කරලා පෙන්වන්න. එතකොට අපි පිළිගන්නම්. පෙන්වන්න ඇග්‍රීමන්ට් එකක් නිශ්චිතව තියෙනවද කියලා. එතකොට අපි පිළිගන්නම්.
අද දින මගේ කතාව ඇතුළත මම මේ ගිවිසුම සභාගත කරනවා. ඒ වගේ මම ඔවුන්ට අභියෝග කරනවා. අර කියන MOU එක වාම අද දවස් ඇතුළත ඔවුන් සභාගත කළ යුතුමයි. මේකේ පළවෙනි වගන්තියෙන් කියනවා upon the execution of the agreement LIOC shall take over possession of the storage facility upon the payment of a sum of $100,000 on account of handing over of such possession. ඒ කියන්නේ පෙබරවාරි මාසේ 7 වෙනිදාම චරිත රත්වත්ත මහත්තයාට ඩොලර් ලක්ෂයක් බාර දීලා භුක්තිය බාර දීලා ඉවරයි. 2016 දෙසැම්බර් මාසේ 30 වෙනිදා මේ තෙල් ටැංකිය වලට තෙල් සංස්ථාවේ නිලධාරීන් පිරිසක් යවන ඇතුළු වෙන්න. හැබැයි ඒ නිලධාරීන්ම LIOC ආයතනයේ විසින් බලාත්කාරයෙන් රඳවගෙන පොලිසියට බාර දෙනවා. තෙල් සංස්ථාවේ නිලධාරීන් ලංකාවේ නිලධාරීන් අපේ ස්ථානයට බලාත්කාරයෙන් ඇතුළු වුණා කියලා. මෙතුමන්ලා කියන ආකාරයට දුන්නේ නැත්නම් මෙතුමන්ලාගේ ආණ්ඩුව කාලෙම මෙතුමන්ලාගේ නිලධාරීන් අත්අඩංගුවට පත් වෙනවා විතරක් නෙවෙයි. රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ හිටපු අගමැතිතුමා මේ අවස්ථාවේ මෙතන නැහැ. ඉන්දියානු තානාපතිතුමා අගමැතිතුමා හම්බෙලා අපිට දුන්නු ඉඩමට බලාත්කාරයෙන් ලාංකික නිලධාරීන් ඇතුළු වීම පිළිබඳ ඉන්දියානු ආණ්ඩුවේ විරෝධය පළ කරා. දන්නේ නැත්නම් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ හිටපු අගමැතිතුමාගෙන් අහලා දැනගන්න කියලා අපි මෙතුමන්ලාට කියනවා.
Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Pathirana today brushed aside speculation that the government is mulling a request from the Omani government to waive off the interest payment of the $3.6 billion loan they offered in return for oil exploration plots. Responding to questions today, Dr. Pathirana said that no such proposal has been taken up for considerations by the Cabinet of Ministers. Meanwhile, touching on the status of the country's GSP Plus concession following the visit of an EU delegation, the Cabinet co-spokesperson expressed confidence that Sri Lanka will not miss out on the trade concession.
The Omani government's recent offer of a $3.6 billion loan to Sri Lanka to fund its fuel purchases hit headlines in the past week. However, with Sri Lanka's dwindling foreign reserves a major cause of stress to the government, the news was much welcome but turned out to be too good to be true after recent reports of another offer which, given the circumstances, is a tough one to reject. The Omani offer was a waiver of the interest payments on the $3.6 billion in return for the Sri Lankan government giving them an area for oil exploration. However, when the question was taken up at the Cabinet media briefing today, co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Pathirana announced that no such decision has been taken up for consideration by the Cabinet of Ministers.
In the particular cabinet decision, actually there was no agreement in relation to this land claim. It's only the loan agreement that we have reached, the $3.6 billion loan over a period of 1 year for the procurement of oil for Sri Lanka. We understand that they have made such request in relation to allocation of land for the investigation of oil reserves in Sri Lanka, but it was not approved by the cabinet. We have not taken a decision as such. It's only the interest payment, and also we take the loan for a period of 1 year's time.
Meanwhile, with major concerns regarding the fate of the country's GSP Plus concession after the recent visit by an EU delegation, the cabinet co-spokesperson also touched on the issue today, expressing confidence that Sri Lanka will not lose out.
යුරෝපියානු සංගමේ නියෝජිත මහත්වරුන්ට ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ස්ථාවරය සහ රටේ අනන්‍යතාවය ආරක්ෂා කර ගැනීමෙන් ජාතින් අතර මිත්‍රත්වය සහ සුවදතාවය ආරක්ෂා කර ගැනීම වෙනුවෙන් කරන කටයුතු විස්තර කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා අපේ පැත්තෙන් කරන්නට අවශ්‍ය සියලුම කටයුතු GSP සහනේ ආරක්ෂා කර ගැනීම වෙනුවෙන් කරන්නට අපි කැප වෙලා කටයුතු කරනවා. ඒ නිසා TNA සමග සාකච්ඡාවේ සිදුවුණු කරුණු කාරණා පිළිබඳව අපි දැනුවත් නැහැ. නමුත් තාම පැහැදිලිව මානව හිමිකම් කොමිසමට පවා අපි ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තියෙනවා අපේ ඉදිරි සැලැස්ම සහ වර්තමාන සිදුවන කටයුතු පිළිබඳව. රටේ තත්ත්වය නැසින් දැකලා තිබෙනවා ජාති ආගම් කුලමල ભેදයකින් තොරව මේ රටේ සියලුම ජාතීන්ට එක්ව මිත්‍රශීලීව ජීවත් විය හැකි රටක් උන් දැනුවත් වෙන්නට ඇති. ඒ නිසා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා මේ GSP සහනය පිළිබඳව අපිට ස්ථාවර මට්ටමක් රැකගෙන ඒක ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා.
Meanwhile, among other decisions announced at the briefing today was the cabinet go-ahead to provide high-speed internet facilities to rural villagers through a project called Communication to the Village. The funds for the project will be sourced from the Telecommunication Development Fund. Further, the cabinet has also approved a proposal to transfer a property of more than 4 acres belonging to the Urban Development Authority to the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission as well. The property will be used to complete the remainder of the Lotus Tower development plans, which will include tourist attractions as well. The cabinet has also green-lighted the recognition of HCL Technologies Lanka, a major IT investment project by Indian tech giant HCL Technologies under the Strategic Development Act. Meanwhile, a proposal to set up a subsidiary of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation that will begin LP gas operations was also green-lighted by the cabinet. In good news for cryptocurrency enthusiasts, the cabinet also approved the appointment of a committee of skilled professionals from the public and private sectors to advise the cabinet on the acts, rules and regulations required to attract investments in cryptocurrency mining in Sri Lanka. This will also include amendments to the BOI Act in order to facilitate these investments.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has ordered an immediate investigation into the involvement of a Sri Lankan duo in using shell companies to move around their undisclosed wealth, as revealed in global expose The Pandora Papers. Former Minister Nirupama Rajapaksa and her spouse Thirukumar Nadesan are the 2 high-profile Sri Lankan names that were revealed. Meanwhile, the accused businessman Thirukumar Nadesan has written to the president calling for an independent investigator to probe the matter while assuring his complete innocence from any wrongdoing.
A 2-year-long global investigation brought to light the hidden wealth of famous figures around the world, ranging from politicians to sports personalities, through the controversial Pandora Papers revelations. The findings have had somewhat of an impact on Sri Lanka as well, with 2 of its citizens, namely former Minister Nirupama Rajapaksa and her spouse Thirukumar Nadesan, exposed. The documents have shown that the duo used shell companies to purchase luxury apartments in both London and Sydney and make investments across the world. As per the expose, Nadesan's personal wealth has been estimated at a staggering $160 million. On the heels of these developments, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today called for an immediate investigation into the matter, with the Bribery Commission tasked with leading the probe. Meanwhile, the matter was also taken up during today's cabinet media briefing.
The president has categorically stated the fact that we will initiate an investigation in relation to this claim, and also he has instructed the Director General of Bribery and Corruption Commission to investigate and provide a comprehensive report within 1 month's time. Now this has come to the limelight. We have to check and see whether the second offer is available now. Through that, we brought in that special act to bring money which was not disclosed earlier, but this is entirely different scenario. I can't say offhand whether we can accept that or not at this particular moment. First, we have to look at the timelines, because the main allegation is that this had happened during our time. So first we have to ensure that whether this has happened during our time or whether it happened before 2005. That's one line of investigation. And secondarily, there is no offense of having a foreign account. So once we conclude those investigations, we can look into the second aspect of it. It has to be decided after some time.
Meanwhile, Thirukumar Nadesan has written to the president and called for an immediate investigation into the matter through the appointment of an independent investigator. In his letter, Nadesan assures that he and his wife are innocent and have not been involved in any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, several complaints were received by the Bribery Commission today from attorneys and civil society activists calling for an investigation into Rajapaksa and Nadesan. The matter was also once again taken up in Parliament as well, with opposition leader Sajith Premadasa calling for the government to use international investigation agencies to probe the duo.
මේ වංචාවට සම්බන්ධ සියලුම දෙනා එක මිටට හෙළිදරව් කළ යුතුයි. මේ අරමුදල් කාගේද කොහෙන්ද ඉපයුවේ මේ සියල්ල පිළිබඳව සත්‍ය රටට හෙළිදරව් විය යුතුයි. ඒ සඳහා ජාත්‍යන්තර පිළිගැනීමකට ලක්ව තිබෙන මේ පරීක්ෂණ කණ්ඩායම ස්කොට්ලන්ඩ් යාඩ් හෝ වේවා විනිවිද භාවයෙන් යුක්ත වූ පරීක්ෂණයක් පවත්වලා සත්‍යය රටට හෙළිදරව් කරන්නයි කියලා මම යෝජනා කරනවා.
පැන්ඩෝරා පේපර් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ලෝකයේ මත දෙකක් තියෙනවා. සමහරු කියනවා මේක හරි කියලා, සමහරු මේක වැරදි කියලා කියනවා. හැබැයි කෙසේ වෙතත් දෙන්නෙක්ට චෝදනා එල්ල වෙලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඒක කියවලා බැලුවම 1990 98 අතර ඒ කියන්නේ රණසිංහ ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්තයාගේ ආණ්ඩුවයි චන්ද්‍රිකා බණ්ඩාරනායක මැතිණියගේ ආණ්ඩුවයි කාලේ කරපු ගණදිනු ගැන තමයි තියෙන්නේ. 2005න් පස්සේ කිසිම ගණදිනුවක් ගැන ඒවයි සඳහන් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඒ පිළිබඳව මම හිතන්නේ ඒ අයත් උත්තර දෙන්න ඕනේ.
දැන් මේ තත්ත්වයට ඔවුන්ට හැකියාවක් තියෙනව නේද 100ට 2ක් ගෙවලා ඔය සල්ලි ලංකාවට ගෙන්න.
නෑ ඉතින් අපරාධයක් කළා තියෙන බවට සාක්ෂි තියෙනවනම් ඒ කරන්න බෑ. ඒ මුදල් කිසිසේත් ඒ පනත පාවිච්චි කරමින් අපේ ආර්ථිකයට ඇතුළු කිරීමට ඉඩකඩ නැහැ.
The Asian Development Bank has pledged to increase its concessionary loan amount to Sri Lanka next year to $1 billion. This was communicated to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday by the ADB's Director General for its South Asia Department, Kenichi Yokoyama.
During a meeting with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday, Asian Development Bank Director General for its South Asia Department, Kenichi Yokoyama, has assured the bank's support for the promotion of small and medium-scale enterprises in Sri Lanka. With Sri Lanka having received a $750 million concessional loan last year for the project, Yokoyama also announced the ADB's decision to increase this amount to $1 billion next year. The president also briefed the ADB official on the government's plans to reduce the use of fossil fuels and move towards the use of renewable energy sources with a focus on wind and solar power. The head of state also outlined the government's policy decision on organic fertilizer and requested technical assistance for local production of organic fertilizer and nitrogen extraction. Further, with the government aiming to uplift incomes and living standards of the country's rural population engaged in agriculture, the president also pointed out the urgent need to increase the country's forest cover through economically viable cultivation and sought the assistance of the ADB.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Big 3.
Welcome back in more news. The Colombo Chief Magistrate has rejected the bail application submitted on behalf of the software engineer of Epic Lanka Technologies, who was arrested over the data deletion from the database of National Medicines Regulatory Authority. The suspect was further remanded by the magistrate until the 18th of this month.
The case pertaining to the deletion of data from the database of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority was taken up before the Colombo Chief Magistrate today. Representing the remanded software engineer of Epic Lanka Technologies, President's Counsel Saleh Peiris requested the magistrate to grant the suspect bail. Peiris pointed out that the decision whether the data was deleted intentionally or by mistake needs to be decided by an IT expert following the conclusion of the investigation. Peiris added that the charges filed against him under the Computer Crimes Act are bailable offences. Further, he also went on to say that despite charges having been filed under the Public Properties Act, in his opinion, data does not fall under this category. However, Senior Deputy Solicitor General Dileepa Peiris objected to the bail application. The Senior Deputy Solicitor General argued that the deleted data was part of government property. Peiris also made further submissions to the court through the submission of a B report. He went on to say that there had been incidents of data deletion from the NMRA database prior to the incident on the 9th of July. He revealed that internal data on tenders presented by new companies expecting to import high-quality medicines were being leaked to pharmaceutical racketeers by officials at the NMRA. After considering the facts presented, the Colombo Chief Magistrate ordered the suspect to be remanded until the 18th of this month.
Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemant Teherath, urged the public to maintain responsible behaviour to prevent any virus spread that can affect the plans for the reopening of schools.
On the 27th of April, schools island-wide were ordered to remain closed due to a rapid surge in COVID-19 infections within the country. The decision to reopen them was postponed on several instances as the pandemic situation in the country turned from bad to worse. However, with lockdown measures and the effective vaccination drive, the country was able to see a reduction in COVID-19 cases since the second week of last month. Following this, the Ministries of Health and Education announced their plans to reopen schools in several phases. Yesterday, schools with students below 200 were given the green light to reopen on the 21st of this month, ending a near 7-month closure. Following the decision, the State Ministry of Dhamma Schools, Pirivenas and Bhikkhu Education also issued a circular today, allowing the Piriven and Bhikkhuni Education institutes with less than 200 students to reopen on the 14th. However, despite these plans, government teachers once again launched protests today, urging the government to provide solutions to their salary anomalies. However, with plans set to reopen the country completely, the view of health experts is that these mass gatherings could cause the virus to spread once again.
80 දශකයේ අගභාගයේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ක්ෂේත්‍රයේත් ඒ වගේම පාසල්වලත් සිදුවුණු ඒ වෙලාවේ තිබිච්ච ඒ අවිනිශ්චිතතාවයන් සහ ඒ අධ්‍යාපන කටයුතු වලට සිදුවුණු බාධාව අද වෙනකලුත් 100%ක් නිවැරදි කරන්න බැරි වෙලා තියෙනවා. මෙවැනි සිදුවීම් හරහා මතුවන්නා වූ බාධා කිරීම සහ බාධා වීම නැවත ප්‍රතිස්ථාපනය කිරීම දවසෙන් දෙකෙන් කරන්න බෑ. ඉතින් මේ නිසාම අද වෙනකොට මේ දරුවන්ගේ අධ්‍යාපනයේට මේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පද්ධති වල වෙලා තියෙන අවහිර කිරීම මේ අවහිර වීම මේවා නැවත ප්‍රතිස්ථාපනය කිරීමට සමහර විට දශක ගණනාවක් ගත වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි මේ ක්‍රමානුකූලව ලිහිල් කරන මේ සෞඛ්‍ය මාර්ගෝපදේශ අනුගමනය කරමින් රට ක්‍රමානුකූලව නව සාමාන්‍ය කරා ගෙන ගොස් මේ අවස්ථාවේ සියලු පුරවැසියන්ගේ වගකීම තමයි නැවත වතාවක් දරුණු තත්ත්වයක් ඇති වෙලා මේ රෝගය පැතිරෙන්න තියෙන ඉඩකඩ සැලසෙන පරිදි හැසිරීමෙන් වැළකී සිටීම.
Member of the Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases, Dr. Harsha Satish Chandra, says that vaccinations for children between 15 and 19 years will commence within the next 2 weeks. He also went on to say that so far, only first doses have been recommended, with second shots to be decided if a need arises for it.
Yesterday, the Sri Lanka College of Pediatricians announced how it expects to expand the current vaccination drive, targeting children and youth with comorbidities. Currently, only 12 to 19-year-olds are being included in the drive. However, at the media briefing organized by the Health Promotion Bureau today, member of the Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Harsha Satish Chandra, hinted that vaccination of children between 15 and 19 could commence as early as within the next 2 weeks.
මේ පටන් ගන්නේ අවුරුදු 19 සිට 15ට. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම සාමාන්‍ය වශයෙන් උසස් පෙළ හදාරන සිසුන්ගේ සිට 15ට එන්නත ලබා දෙන්නේ ෆයිසර් එන්නත. මේ එන්නතේ දැනට අපි යෝජනා කරලා තියෙන්නේ පළවෙනි එන්නත ලබා දෙන්න කියලා ඒ වයස් කාණ්ඩයට මේ එන්නත ලබා දීම සිදු කෙරෙන්නේ අර කලින් කරපු පරිදි රෝහල් ආශ්‍රිතව සහ MOH ප්‍රදේශ ආශ්‍රිතව.
However, on the subject of second doses for this age group, Dr. Satish Chandra says that it may be too early to make a call just yet.
දෙවෙනි මාත්‍රාවක් ගැන අපි දැම්මම කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඊට පසුව අවශ්‍ය වූ විට පමණයි මේ දෙවෙනි මාත්‍රාව මේ කාණ්ඩයට අපි ලබා දීම ගැන නිර්දේශ ලබා දෙන්නේ.
Meanwhile, as the children's vaccination drive continues, the Sri Lanka College of Pediatricians says that the drive is not only limited to children being treated at government hospitals, but those using private treatment too can get their jabs with a recommendation from their physicians.
රජයේ පමණක් නොවේ පෞද්ගලික රෝහල් වල ප්‍රතිකාර ලබන ළමුන් වුණත් පෞද්ගලික රෝහල් වල අධීක්ෂණය යටතේ සිටින ළමුන් වුණත් අදාළ රෝගය තියෙනවා නම් ඒ රෝග කාණ්ඩ වලට වැටෙනවා නම් ඔවුන්ට එන්නත ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඇවිල්ලා ඒ අදාළ වෛද්‍යවරයාගේ නිර්දේශ ලිපියකුත් සමග අදාළ රෝහලට යොමු වෙන්න. එතකොට අපිට එය බොහොම පහසුවෙන් කරලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්.
Meanwhile, with the Advisory Committee of Communicable Diseases announcing last week that booster shots are in the pipeline for specific target groups, Health Minister Keheliya Rambukwala offered some clarification on the matter in Parliament today.
ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානය විසින් නිර්ණායකයන් වගේක් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තියෙනවා දැනට 65ට වැඩි අය. නමුත් අපේ සෞඛ්‍ය ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ 60 ඉඳන් අපි ගම්මුයි කියන තීන්දුවකට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අපි කියනවා ෆ්‍රන්ට් ලයිනර්ස් සෞඛ්‍ය සේවයේ ඉදිරියේ වැඩ කරන කණ්ඩායම් වලට ඒ ලබා දෙන්න. දැනට තියෙන්නේ මේ නිර්දේශ පමණයි WHO එකේ නිර්දේශ හැටියට සහ පිළිගත් මතයන් හැටියට.
Meanwhile, as of last evening, 14,615,232 persons have received a single dose of a COVID vaccine. Of that number, 11,967,327 have received both vaccine doses.
Addressing the third committee of 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly yesterday on the subject of advancement of women, Sri Lanka's UN representative Mohan Peris assured Sri Lanka's continued commitment to pro-equality and pro-empowerment policies, which he says has resulted in much improvement in the areas as well as in equal participation both in the workplace and in the political sphere.
Sri Lanka's achievement in the health and education sectors have allowed women to secure a higher status in society and in the workplace. As such, women enjoy equal opportunities and choices, and their voices are heard at the highest level. The world's first woman prime minister, as you know, hailed from Sri Lanka, and we elected a woman president. The required steps are being taken to increase sustained investment targeted at gender equality and social protection in the country. This includes the establishment of anti-harassment committees in government departments and ministries, with guidelines being prepared to further enhance their operation. Private companies, including factories in free trade zones, have also established sexual harassment committees, and a code of conduct was introduced in 2013 to prevent and address any sexual harassment in the private sector by the Employers Federation of Sri Lanka. With regard to domestic violence, the Domestic Violence Act has been in force since 2005 and is addressing complaints. The Sri Lanka Police has also taken steps to increase the women cadre, and Tamil-speaking prosecutors have been appointed to all the high courts in the north and east of the country, allowing Tamil-speaking women to claim their rights. Madam President, in 2021, the Parliament Women Caucus has proposed to the Parliament Select Committee on Electoral Reforms to identify appropriate reforms of the election laws and the electoral system, and to recommend necessary amendments that 50% of the national list of elected parliamentarians be women, and that the representation of women in Parliament, the provincial councils and local government bodies should be increased by 30%. As a country that has a sex ratio favorable to women, we are cognizant that the advancement of the country will ultimately depend on our ability to enable women and young people to be active participants in the country's development agenda, and we will continue to advocate for women's empowerment and rights quite vigorously.
We return after this short commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back in your business news. At the stock market today, the All Share Price Index gained by 92.81 points to end at 9,626.45. The S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks meanwhile ended at 3,602.46 after gaining 62.72 points. Market turnover at the day's close were 4.1 billion rupees. With that, here's Dimantha Matthew with a brief report on the market performance today.
Today we saw a sudden banking sector run with the government announcing approval for the blockchain technology to take place within Sri Lanka, promoting a digital economy. With it, we saw a significant increase in the banking sector overall, where most banking sector counters significantly appreciated in value. So today's market saw a gain of 92 points as the SPI renewed its all-time high record with today's closing of 9,626 points. Overall, we saw turnover levels of around 4.1 billion rupees. However, bulk of the turnover was concentrated on the transportation sector and the capital goods sector again, but the banking sector is today following very closely behind. We are seeing
the rupee remains unchanged at 202 rupees and 99 cents against the US dollar during the day. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.